The crisp autumn air of October 28, 1994, carried the usual sounds of a small town settling in for the weekend. In the quiet community of Harmony Creek, leaves of red skittered across manicured lawns, leaves of gold skittered across manicured lawns. Children's laughter echoed from a nearby park. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky orange, painting the sky purple. It was a perfectly ordinary Friday, the kind that promises cozy evenings and the gentle rhythm of familiar life. No one could have imagined that this tranquil afternoon was the prelude to a silence that would stretch across 3 long decades. It was the last day anyone in Harmony Creek would see 17-year-old Sarah Jenkins alive, a day that would forever be etched in the town's memory, not for its beauty, but for the darkness that followed. Sarah was the heart of her high school's music program. Her violin was more than just an instrument, it was an extension of her soul. Friends remember her practicing in the empty auditorium, the sweet, melancholic notes drifting through the hallways long after classes had ended. She dreamed of Juilliard, she dreamed of concert halls filled with applause, she dreamed of a life dedicated to her craft. That afternoon, she had just finished a rehearsal for the upcoming fall concert. She packed her sheet music, she carefully placed her violin in its case. She waved goodbye to her friends with a bright smile. She told them she was just taking a short walk through the wooded trail behind the school, a familiar path she often took to clear her head before heading home for dinner. The sun dipped below the horizon. The streetlights of Harmony Creek flickered to life. Sarah's parents began to worry. Mark, Linda. It wasn't like her to be late without calling. Her father drove the short distance to the school, thinking she might have lost track of time practicing. He found the auditorium dark and empty. A feeling of unease settled in his stomach as he called her name into the growing darkness, his voice swallowed by the vast, silent football field. He checked the wooded trail, its entrance now a gaping maw of shadows. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind, a lonely, unsettling whisper that seemed to mock his growing panic. As the hours stretched into a cold, starless night, the Jenkins' quiet worry blossomed into full-blown terror. The police were called. Flashing blue lights, flashing red lights sliced through the idyllic neighborhood, a stark and jarring intrusion. Neighbors emerged from their homes, their faces etched with concern, offering help and hushed words of support. The search began that very night, with flashlights cutting feeble paths through the dense woods behind the school. But the trail that Sarah had walked just hours before offered no clues. It was as if the earth itself had opened up and swallowed her whole, leaving behind only a chilling void, and a question that would haunt Harmony Creek for the next 30 years. Where was Sarah Jenkins? The community waited, for an answer that never came. The initial investigation was a whirlwind of activity, a desperate scramble for answers in the face of an unthinkable crime. The entire town of Harmony Creek mobilized, hundreds of volunteers, high school students, concerned parents, combed every inch of the woods, their calls for Sarah echoing through the trees. Police set up a command post in the school gymnasium, floors soon scuffed by muddy boots. The case dominated local news, newspapers, television screens. Every lead was pursued with vigor, every rumor chased down. Each path led to a frustrating dead end, a wall of silence that seemed to grow higher with each passing day. As days turned into weeks, the hope that had once fueled the search began to flicker and wane. The yellow police tape that had cordoned off the woods was eventually taken down. The volunteer search parties dwindled, replaced by a somber quiet that settled over the town like a permanent shroud. The case files grew thick with dead-end interviews, unsubstantiated sightings, theories that led nowhere. For the Jenkins family, the world had been irrevocably broken. Their home, once filled with music and laughter, became a quiet monument to their grief. They kept Sarah's room exactly as she had left it, a pristine time capsule waiting for a return that in their hearts they knew was becoming less and less likely. Over the years, the case of Sarah Jenkins slowly faded from the headlines, becoming a piece of local folklore, a ghost story whispered among a new generation of high school students. It was the town's enduring scar, a painful reminder of a promise unfulfilled. A succession of detectives inherited the heavy, dust-covered boxes of files, each one opening them with a renewed sense of duty, only to close them again with a heavy sigh of resignation. The evidence was thin. The trail had gone ice cold, and the technology of the time had offered little help. The case became a symbol of the limits of justice, a painful chapter that seemed destined to remain forever unfinished. But even as the world moved on, a small, dedicated group of people refused to let Sarah's memory be buried by the passage of time. A young detective who was just a child when Sarah vanished found himself drawn to the cold case files. He saw not just a collection of old reports, but a puzzle waiting for the right piece. He believed that somewhere within those aging documents, or perhaps in the silent testimony of long-forgotten evidence, the truth was still waiting. This is the story of how 3 decades of silence were finally shattered. It is the story of how new eyes and revolutionary technology uncovered a shocking truth, proving that no case is ever truly cold, and that justice, no matter how long it is delayed, can still find its way home. It's a long road to that revelation. To understand the void Sarah Jenkins left behind, you have to understand the light she brought into the world. She wasn't just a name on a missing person poster. She was a daughter, she was a friend, she was a dreamer. Sarah was a study in gentle contradictions. She was intensely focused when playing her violin. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, yet she was known for her infectious, uninhibited laughter that could fill a room. Her friends recall her as the one who always had a kind word. She was the one who would stay late to help a classmate struggling with a difficult piece of music. She carried her dreams of Juilliard not as a burden of ambition, but as a joyful certainty. A future she was steadily and happily building note by note. Her bedroom was a sanctuary dedicated to her 2 great loves, music, literature. Stacks of classical sheet music sat beside well-worn novels by Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters. Her walls were adorned with posters of famous violinists like Itzhak Perlman. Their images watched over the room like guardian angels of her aspirations. This was the space where she was most herself. She could lose herself for hours in the intricate melodies of Bach or the romantic prose of a classic novel. It was a room filled with life and potential, a vibrant reflection of the young woman who inhabited it. It remains a painful, perfectly preserved museum of a life interrupted, a testament to the future that was stolen. Sarah's daily life was a predictable and comforting rhythm, a metronome beat that her family and friends had come to rely on. Mornings were for school, afternoons were for practice, and evenings were for family dinners and homework. She had a part-time job at the local library, where she would reshelve books with a quiet diligence. She often sneaked a few chapters of a newfound story during her break. She was responsible and dependable, the kind of teenager who made her parents proud. Not through grand achievements, but through the simple consistency of her character. It was this very predictability that made her sudden disappearance all the more jarring and incomprehensible. She was not a runaway. She was a girl who was deeply rooted in her life, her family, and her future. Her violin was her voice. Through its strings, she could express a depth of emotion that her sometimes shy demeanor kept hidden. When she played, a transformation occurred. The quiet girl became a powerful storyteller. She wove tales of sorrow, joy, and passion with her bow. The fall concert she was preparing for was meant to be her showcase, the performance where she would play a solo piece she had been mastering for months. Her music teacher believed it would be the performance that secured her a scholarship, the one that would open the doors to her dreams. But the auditorium fell silent. The solo was never played. The music that was Sarah's very essence was abruptly and brutally silenced, replaced by a deafening quiet that would last for decades. You know, it's heartbreaking to think about. The afternoon of October 28, 1994 began like any other Friday. Sarah attended her last class, then went to the school auditorium for her final rehearsal before the weekend. Her music teacher later recalled she played with exceptional passion that day. When rehearsal ended around 4:30 p.m., she exchanged light-hearted goodbyes with friends. The plan was simple and familiar. She took the shortcut home through the Oak Ridge Trail, a well-trodden path cutting through woods by the school. A walk she'd taken hundreds of times, a brief 10-minute journey home. As she stepped onto the trail, the world was painted in warm, fading autumn light. The path was carpeted in fallen leaves, their crunch a familiar soundtrack. This was her transition between school and family, likely lost in thought, replaying the music in her head, thinking about the weekend ahead. In that small, safe corridor of nature, a place of peace and familiarity, Sarah Jenkins reached her vanishing point. She walked into the woods and never walked out. Her disappearance is a chilling blank in the timeline. No screams were heard, no signs of a struggle were reported. No one saw her talking to a stranger or getting into a car. The ordinariness of it is what makes it so terrifying. 1 minute, a teenage girl walking home violin case in hand, mind on the future. The next, she was gone. The threat was silent, swift, utterly invisible. It moved through a small-town afternoon, leaving no immediate witnesses and no obvious clues. The woods, once for games and walks, had become the scene of an unseen crime. The initial search revealed almost nothing. Police and volunteers' flashlights slicing into dusk scanned for disturbance. They found scattered footprints impossible to tie to Sarah among daily trail users. Her violin, her backpack, her wallet. Everything was gone. The absence of evidence was a clue, not an accident, not a runaway, but something far more sinister. It suggested an abduction, someone who knew how to control a situation, how to erase their presence, how to melt back into the shadows, leaving only a profound, terrifying silence. And that's where the long mystery truly begins.